Today's tech news moves fast, but understanding it shouldn't be hard. That's why Snarful Solutions Group brings you Connecting the Dots, where we break down what's happening in tech and why it matters to you. Now, let's dive in with your hosts.
Imagine your company handing over its entire artificial intelligence budget for the year 2026. Just like a massive multi-billion-dollar war chest designed to last 12 full months.
Right.
Now imagine watching every single cent of that just evaporate in 4 months. I mean, today we're unpacking why the enterprise AI revolution is quietly turning into this catastrophic financial trap, and why the biggest tech giants are suddenly warning businesses to pull back. Welcome to Connecting the Dots. I'm Alex.
And I'm Morgan. We're coming to you live from Snarful Solutions Group in Sacramento, California.
That's right. Today is Monday, June 22, 2026. And this is your daily show breaking down the latest tech news and, really figuring out how it actually impacts your everyday life and your work.
Exactly. But before we get into the heavy stuff, should we kick things off with the Morning Star Report?
Yeah, let's do it. So looking out the window here in Sacramento, we are in for a hot one. It's going to be sunny, hitting a high of 91 degrees Fahrenheit with a light breeze, winds somewhere between 3 to 12 miles per hour. Nationally, however, the weather map is incredibly active right now.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
We are looking at 277 active U.S. weather alerts, and 206 of those are over land.
Wow, that's a lot. Well, on the financial side, the markets are a bit of a mixed bag to start the week. The Dow closed slightly down on Thursday at 51,564.78. But, the broader market showed resilience, with the S&P 500 climbing to close up at 7,500.58.
Okay, not bad.
And for the crypto watchers out there, Bitcoin actually had a remarkably strong weekend. It opened today at 63,242.26 and has already jumped up to 64,985.38.
Nice. A nice little weekend bump for the crypto portfolios. What about sports? Any good news for the local California teams?
Unfortunately, no. Brace yourself for a collective sigh here. The SF Giants dropped a close one, losing 1-2 against the Miami Marlins, and the Athletics also took a hit, losing 7-9 in a shootout against the Angels.
Ouch. Well, you win some, you lose some. Let's pivot to what we are really here to explore today, because we have a fascinating stack of sources to get through.
We really do.
I mean, a major Wall Street Journal interview and a viral X essay from Microsoft CEO, fresh financial disclosures from Getty Images, a sweeping new Commerce Department directive from the White House, and even some historical accounts from the 1990s crypto wars.
It's quite the list.
It is. But if there's one word that binds all of this source material together, it's control. We are looking at a massive three-front power struggle over the tools you use every day. Who controls the underlying architecture of enterprise AI, who controls the massive data pipelines feeding those systems, and what happens when the U.S. government decides it needs to control exactly who gets access. Let's look closer.
Today's episode is brought to you by Strong Coffee, the premium instant coffee that tastes like a traditional brew but is packed with 15 grams of protein, MCTs, and adaptogens like ashwagandha. Get clean, sustained energy without the jitters. Use promo code SNARFUL for 20% off at strongcoffeecompany.com.
So if Microsoft is arguably the biggest beneficiary of the generative AI boom, then their CEO, Satya Nadella, just issued a warning that should make, frankly, every corporate IT department freeze in its tracks.
Oh, absolutely. In this new Wall Street Journal interview and that incredibly detailed essay posted to X, Nadella essentially pointed a finger directly at the AI frontier labs, specifically OpenAI and Anthropic.
Which is wild, right? Because the context here is dizzying. Microsoft has invested billions into these exact companies.
Right.
But Nadella is out here issuing a sharp rebuke, warning that an industry dominated by a few massive generalized AI models is not just politically dangerous, it's economically unsustainable for the businesses relying on them.
Yeah, and the phrase Nadella anchors his essay on is social license to operate, which is, it's a concept usually reserved for heavy industries like mining or oil extraction.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's the idea that an industry needs ongoing implicit approval from the public to function. Like if you extract resources without enriching the community, you lose that trust, which inevitably leads to severe regulation. Nadella's argument is that the major AI labs are currently burning through their social license at an alarming rate without doing anything to replenish it.
Which completely tracks when you look at the contradictory messaging coming out of those labs. You have Anthropic CEO casually predicting that AI could eliminate half of all entry-level white-collar jobs in just a few years.
Right, pushing unemployment to 20%.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in the very next breath, These exact same companies are demanding massive new data centers, nuclear power allocations, and total regulatory freedom so they can keep scaling. Nadella is essentially saying, you cannot promise a white-collar economic apocalypse and then turn around and ask society for a blank check to build the machine that causes it.
Exactly. And beyond the societal implications, there's a very tangible structural crisis happening inside the companies actually using these tools. This brings us to what the tech sector is now calling the token trap.
The token trap.
Right. For anyone integrating AI into their daily corporate workflows, you understand that an AI model processes information in tokens. But we aren't just talking about a user typing a prompt and getting a paragraph back anymore. We've moved firmly into the era of agentic AI workflows.
Right, and the architectural consequences of those agentic workflows are exactly what is causing these budgets to implode. When you assign an AI agent to a complex software engineering task, it doesn't just read the prompt once.
No, not at all.
The agent writes a piece of code, runs it in a sandbox, reads the massive error log when it inevitably fails, analyzes the failure, writes a new block of code, and loops this process hundreds or thousands of times.
Yeah.
It's having this internal compounding conversation with itself. And because you are renting that intelligence via an API, the meter is running on every single token generated during that massive background loop.
Yeah, the sheer volume of computational cost is staggering, and it's hitting the biggest companies on Earth right now. Let's look at the numbers. Uber deployed Anthropic's Claude Code to roughly 5,000 of their engineers.
Okay.
In just 4 months, they burned through their entire AI budget for the year 2026.
Wait, really? Their whole yearly budget?
The whole thing. A $3.4 billion budget evaporated in a third of a year, entirely due to the compounding token costs of agentic workflows.
That is insane. And Microsoft wasn't immune either. According to the internal reports, Microsoft actually had to cancel internal API licenses for their own engineers working on Windows and Teams because the compounding costs were hitting upwards of $2,000 a month per single engineer.
Wow.
I want to bring in an analogy here because the structural risk of this feels incredibly familiar. Think back to the 1990s and the massive wave of corporate globalization.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, companies looked at their domestic manufacturing lines and realized they could outsource the labor overseas to save cash. On paper, the quarterly margins looked fantastic. But over a decade, what actually happened? Entire sectors lost their deeply ingrained institutional knowledge. The engineering expertise, the hands-on know-how just vanished.
Right, the brain drain.
Exactly. So wait, if we just rent out our brains to these models, aren't we just outsourcing our company's entire expertise? We pay the AI to learn how to do our jobs, and they keep the knowledge?
Yes, that is exactly the parallel Nadella draws in his essay. When you rely entirely on an external API, which is really just the bridge connecting your company's servers to OpenAI or Anthropic, you're paying a toll for a service, but you aren't building any internal equity. Every time your company uses that frontier model to solve a complex supply chain issue, the model refines its understanding of that domain. That generalized intelligence lives on their servers, not yours. They can then take that newly refined capability and sell it right back to your biggest competitor at the exact same commodity price. You are basically subsidizing the destruction of your own competitive moat.
So if I'm an IT director, or even just an everyday professional watching my company bleed cash to the token trap while giving away our expertise, what's the actual mechanical solution? Like, how does a company stop renting its brain?
Well, Nadella is advocating for a localized architecture known as learning loops. Mechanically, this means businesses need to stop sending every single task to the massive, expensive frontier models. Instead, you deploy smaller open weights models internally, models that your company physically controls on your own servers.
Okay, so you keep it in-house.
Exactly. You use the big frontier models sparingly, maybe just to generate high-quality synthetic training data or to tackle the absolute hardest edge cases. Then you use those successful outputs to continually fine-tune your smaller internal model.
Oh, I see. It's a distillation process. You're using the expensive genius to teach your in-house intern. And over time, the intern handles 90% of the daily workload at a fraction of the cost. The knowledge gets encoded directly into your private system, which protects the expertise of your workers while bypassing the token trap completely.
Precisely. It allows you to swap out the underlying frontier engine whenever you want. You could use OpenAI 1 month and Google the next because your core corporate knowledge isn't locked behind their proprietary API. It's a structural defense mechanism.
Moving on to our next story, this actually connects perfectly. If Microsoft is urging companies to control their internal architecture, the next logical battleground is the raw material actually feeding that architecture, which is the data. And that brings us to Getty Images.
Right, the New Deal.
Yes. We are looking at a massive new display agreement between Getty Images and OpenAI. Getty's licensed content will now natively appear across ChatGPT's search and discovery features. And the market reaction was instantaneous. Getty shares, ticker symbol GETY, skyrocketed over 150% in pre-market trading, eventually settling around $1.35, up 123%.
The financial pop is undeniable, but the historical whiplash is what makes this so compelling. I mean, if we rewind the tape to 2022, Getty Images was arguably the most aggressive corporate opponent of generative AI on the planet.
Oh yeah, they drew a hard line.
They outright banned all AI-generated art from their massive library. Then they went a step further, launching a highly publicized lawsuit against Stability AI for rampant copyright infringement. They really positioned themselves as the ultimate defenders of human creators.
It's the classic, if you can't beat 'em, join 'em trope.
Yeah.
Like a movie villain teaming up with the hero when the money is right.
It totally is. The resistance held out as long as it could, but the gravitational pull of ChatGPT's massive user base was just too strong to ignore. But we really need to unpack the mechanics of this deal because the wording of the press release is incredibly specific.
Right.
It carefully calls this a display agreement. This means OpenAI is likely using a mechanism called Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RG. When you ask ChatGPT for an image of a specific news event, it doesn't hallucinate a new image from scratch. It searches Getty's database, retrieves the official licensed image, and displays it with a proper citation.
And that's the core of the RG architecture. It makes the AI's output significantly more trustworthy because it's anchoring its response in verified real-world data. So for the everyday professional using ChatGPT to build a presentation, your visual responses are about to get significantly richer and critically legally safer.
Exactly. You won't have to wonder if you're going to trigger a copyright lawsuit.
But, Morgan, here is the critical question for the listener. This is a display agreement, but displaying an image is very different from training on an image. We don't know if OpenAI has secured the rights to ingest this pristine library of data into the actual parameter weights of their future models. Does this actually help the 600,000 photographers who took these photos? Or is it just padding Getty's stock price while ChatGPT gets to look more trustworthy?
Yeah, that's the multi-million-dollar pushback. And the silence on the training aspect is deafening. To give you some context, when Getty signed a similar partnership with Perplexity AI last year, they explicitly and loudly stated that their images could not be used for foundational model training.
Right, they made a point of it.
Exactly. The fact that this language is completely missing from the OpenAI announcement suggests a major concession. However, Getty has also been developing its own proprietary generative AI tool, promising royalty-free licenses and full legal indemnification for enterprise users. They're trying to monetize via the AI boom while trying to assure their contributors their underlying copyrights still have value.
It's a tough needle to thread. Let's explore this, because we have companies fighting for control of the architecture and media empires fighting for control of the data. But what happens when the actual U.S. government steps in to control who is even allowed to touch the technology?
Yeah, this is huge.
This brings us to a monumental shift in regulatory policy. The White House just hit Anthropic with a massive export ban, immediately pulling its top-tier AI models, Fable and Mythos, from everyone outside the United States, as well as restricting access for foreign nationals living inside the U.S.
We've officially crossed a threshold where the government is no longer just talking about regulating algorithms. They are treating these frontier AI models with the exact same export controls used for weapons-grade munitions.
Wow. And the triggers for this were what?
Well, reportedly, two main catalysts. First, Anthropic granted limited access to a South Korean telecom company, SK Telecom. U.S. intelligence officials apparently got spooked, suspecting ties to Chinese tech sectors, which SK Telecom strongly denies. Second, researchers at Amazon allegedly found a way to reliably bypass the foundational safety guardrails on Anthropic's Fable 5 model.
A jailbreak that fundamentally compromised the model's safety constraints.
Yeah.
Anthropic disputes how severe that jailbreak was, claiming they patched it immediately, but the damage in the eyes of the regulators was done.
Right.
The Commerce Department issued a directive, and Anthropic reportedly had just 90 minutes to scramble, pull the plug on their international servers, and restrict global access. The funny, or really the most tragic part of this story comes from an analyst on X.
Oh, I saw this.
Yeah, they ran a textual breakdown of how these companies communicate. They found that Anthropic used words related to risk, regulation, or restrictions 5 times out of every 1,000 words. OpenAI used those exact same words just 0.6 times per 1,000 words. Anthropic actively marketed their Mythos model as an incredibly dangerous, doomsday cyber machine to prove how seriously they took safety.
They wanted to be seen as the responsible adults in the room. But the U.S. government essentially looked at their own terrifying marketing materials and said, you know what? We agree. This technology is far too dangerous to be out in the wild. They literally marketed themselves into a federal export ban.
Which is just wow. But Morgan, if Mythos really can be used to supercharge hackers, automating the discovery of zero-day vulnerabilities, shouldn't the government block it? Or are we just going to force all the bad actors to build their own unregulated AI overseas?
Well, to understand why this ban is likely to fail, we have to look back at the 1990s and the crypto wars. The U.S. tried to ban PGP encryption by treating it as a weapon. They placed it on the restricted list and opened a federal criminal investigation against its creator, Phil Zimmerman.
They were treating math like physical weapons.
Exactly. And Zimmerman used a brilliant loophole. He printed the source code into a physical book and published it. You can ban the digital export of software, but a book is protected under the First Amendment. Once the book shipped globally, anyone could scan the pages and compile the code. The government's case completely fell apart.
But there's a crucial difference between 1990s encryption and 2026 AI. You could print PGP in a single paperback. You cannot print a 100 billion parameter neural network in a book. It requires terabytes of storage and massive data centers. Doesn't that make an AI export ban much more enforceable?
It makes the deployment harder to hide, yes, but it doesn't stop the proliferation. It just changes the geography. We saw this in the 2010s with the Wassenaar arrangement regarding spyware. When the US and Europe tightened the screws, malicious companies didn't stop building spyware. They just moved their headquarters to countries outside the treaty's jurisdiction.
Right.
If U.S. labs are forced to navigate massive bureaucratic hurdles for every foreign customer, the global demand doesn't vanish. The capital and talent will just flow offshore.
Which directly shapes the tools you, the listener, will have access to. If American companies are bogged down in compliance, their research slows down, and labs in other countries race ahead without any of those safety guardrails Anthropic was trying to pioneer.
Before we wrap up, a quick thanks to Old Glory, an iconic music and sports fan merch store. Perfect for the techie in your life. Use promo code SNARFL for 15% off at oldglory.com.
So bringing all these threads together, today is really all about the power struggle for the future of work. Whether it's Microsoft warning companies not to go broke, renting AI brains by the token, Getty licensing their visual history to ChatGPT, or Anthropic accidentally marketing themselves into a government export ban.
The undeniable theme here is that whoever controls the computational architecture, the massive data streams it trains on, and the legal right to access it, ultimately controls the entire future economy.
It really leaves us with a final thought to mull over. If the government starts treating advanced AI like weapons-grade material, and companies like Uber are already burning billions just to use it, at what point does the cost of artificial intelligence outweigh the human intelligence we already have? Are we building a brilliant tool to elevate our workforce, or are we constructing a massive looping machine that we simply can no longer afford to turn on?
We're here to help at Snarful, so reach out on our website if you have any more questions.
That's a wrap on today's top stories. Remember, tech doesn't have to be complicated, and we're here to help connect the dots. If you've got questions or want to learn more, visit us at snarful.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.